Grace. So we are going to do a portal demo today. And before we get started, I am logging in and setting up my testing environment. I have put a link to the portal inside the chat. I also put our SSBCI underscore information at treasury.gov email address there. While we're loading up my test environment, we would encourage that anyone that has not logged into the portal in a while or has any changes in your email address or ID.me account, please attempt to log in right now just to make sure you're good to go. And again, it's going to take me a minute or two to set up my environment. So if there are any other questions while I get this set up, please come off mute and ask those questions. Thank you. Okay, if we do not have any questions, my environment actually loaded pretty quickly today. So I did encourage ones that have not logged in a while or had some issues in the past logging in to try to log in. If you are a new user, we encourage you to get added to your jurisdiction's account before clicking this link because you're going to have to log in and create an ID.me account, or if you have an existing ID.me account, you can use that to go into the portal. And I'll show everyone how to add new users in a couple of minutes. So I am ready to share screen, and the link that we have inside of the chat is the link that would take you straight to this page here. If for whatever reason you have a link that does not have the SSBCI-home page as a suffix, you might have one that has CARES Act dash or slash S. That will take you to this page here where you have the ability to read and dismiss the warning and to scroll down to the SSBCI green tile to enter the SSBCI portal. Once you're inside of the portal, everything is exactly like everything else that you interacted with the portal, where you have a left-hand navigation, and you're going to navigate down to Capital Program Disbursement Requests. Click that, and then you will have a blue table for your disbursement request with all of your disbursement requests listed here. If it is your first one, you're going to have a report type of first tranche. Once you've completed that first tranche and you're gearing up towards your second tranche, then you will have a second tranche item. And then subsequently, you will have a third tranche once your second tranche item has been submitted and cleared. So essentially, to get started with your disbursement request, you would click the blue pencil, and that's going to take you into your disbursement record. And just like everything else in the portal, you have a left-hand navigation where you're able to select each one of these sections and move through. You also have at the bottom of the page, you have a back, and then you have a back or next if you're in any of the internal pages, i.e. section 2 or section 3. You're also going to have a widget that does stay sticky, and it shows your jurisdiction. It also shows the status of your disbursement request. So we're going to jump back to section 1, which is a user instructions. It's a lot of good information here. We just advise you to browse through this and read everything. We do have a user guide for the disbursement request within this third paragraph in the top section. And then we have our Privacy Act statement towards the bottom. We'll move to the next section by clicking next. And that will take us to section 2, which is going to be the participating jurisdiction information. Again, this is my testing environment, so this is not going to look like your information, but your jurisdiction will have your implementing entities information in here. And if you have any issues with that or anything looks incorrect, we ask you to reach out to us at the email address that I put into the chat, or we also have the SSBCI underscore information email address at the bottom of this contacts paragraph. And speaking about the context area, we do realize there may be some parts of your jurisdiction that may be interacting with the disbursement request, and they may not be interacting with the application itself. So we do give the ability for you to add contact records to your account. and you would click this page here, and that will take you over to our COVID relief or COVID-19 relief hub, where you have the ability to add users. So you're going to have your first page, which gives a brief description of the users inside of the portal. You have a certification form where you would need to submit this. And this just attests that you are the person that is able to add individuals to the account for access to the portal. Once you type your name in, hit submit, and then you're going to have a designation form. If it's your first time, you're not going to see this designation form until you actually type your name in and click submit. Moving on to the designation form, and this is where you can edit existing users, or you can add a new contact. And again, if this is an individual that you're adding to your account, is the first time logging into the portal, you would add this person here first. And then you have the ability to give them the link, and then they can click on to the ID.me or create an ID.me account, because we need you associated with your account before you are able to log into the portal. What I'm going to do real quick is, if you are, and this is the self-service, we encourage that. If for some reason you're not having the ability to do that, you're having some issues to do that, we do have a form that you can fill out. And I'm looking forward now to see if I can add it into the chat. And this is the account contact update form that you can use in order to request assistance with adding new users to your account. By clicking add new user or add new contact, you first enter all the information for the individual that you're adding to your account: first name, last name, title, name of organization, email address, phone number. Anything with an asterisk is required. And then, as Samari mentioned a little earlier, there are 3 levels of access. You're going to have your account admin access, which has the ability to view and download the template. You have the account POC that can view, download, and upload the completed template inside of the portal. And then the authorized representative can view, download, upload, and certify and submit your disbursement request. And again, as Samari mentioned earlier, please don't conflate this user role of authorized representative inside of adding a new contact with the authorized official that's on your application. Here's just a role for access to the portal. The authorized official on your application, the one that has the authority to sign on behalf of your jurisdiction. So you can come down, you can select whichever role that you desire that is most appropriate for the individual that you're adding. You select that role and you click on add new contact. Again, I'm in my testing environment, so this is not totally linked, so it will not work for me. But once you have everything filled out with an asterisk and you select your role, you click new contact, and that new contact will be added to this table right here. So we're going to go back to the disbursement request. So once you have that new user, again, they would click on the portal link, and then they were able to access if they have an existing ID.me account. If not, that portal link will prompt a new ID.me account. So we're going to move over to section 3. In section 3, we ask you, and this is the data file upload section, we ask you just to make sure that you're reading everything here. There's a lot of good descriptive information on a high level of what already been discussed with Samari and Grace. And if you slowly scroll down, you see, please download the optional template of the disbursement request before form here. And as Mayma alluded to a little earlier, we advise you logging in, clicking this form, downloading it, make sure that everything is pre-populated. And this form is available at all times. So once you've downloaded your form and you've inserted all information that is required, you would save it to your file explorer on your computer, and then you have an upload file section right here. You click that, and it's going to navigate to your Windows Explorer or your file explorer, and then you just navigate to where you've saved your template, and you click on it and hit open. It's going to give a dialog of uploading, and then once it's turned blue, done, you click done, and that is going to populate in the table down here. And don't be alarmed, we do have a user or a naming convention where we add final test record to the name of the file as it's been uploaded. So it may not look exactly like you named it, but this is how the forming or the naming convention changes that name. Once you have everything uploaded, you jump over to section 4 for your certification and submission. And I always advise to copy your name from here and paste it into here. I say that because this section is case and space sensitive. So if I change that to a lowercase s and hit certify and submit, it's going to give me a red arrow up top. So copy it and paste it exactly as you see your name here. And in this case, is all caps with one space in between my first and last. And once you have that there, you're going to click certify and submit. You'll get a green success over here, and then you'll see the status change to e-signature pending. This is still e-signature pending because this form has been routed to the authorized official that has been named on your application, and they will still need to go into their email address and DocuSign the disbursement request for everything to be finalized. And with it, that is the end of the demo. I'll believe I'll send it back over to Raisa.
Thank you, Jay. All right, so I recognize that we're basically over time, but I do hope that you guys can stay and complete the presentation. I'll try to go as fast as I can since this information is really helpful. Okay, so we're going to start with the disbursement request best practices. So at this point, SSBCI compliance, we've gone through several disbursement requests, several second tranche requests, and a few third tranche requests as well. So based on those, we've compiled some best practices that we think will be helpful for you all as you fill out your disbursement request forms. So first, when you're submitting your supporting documentation, you're going to send it via a secure file transfer method. So SSBCI is going to be receiving the supporting documents, and as you know, it's going to contain some personal information. So when you're sending it, it should be through a secure file transfer, and it should also, SSBCI staff should also only be granted temporary access to those supporting documents until the time that the disbursement request process is complete. Okay, before submitting your documentation for the sample transactions, the PJ should review the documentation and make sure that the loan documents are complete, make sure that there are no prohibited terms and limits for SSBCI transactions that are included in the documentation, because as you know, those will send up red flags for us and it will increase the time that we have to request supporting documentation, maybe have some meetings and things like that. So the more you can get ahead of and know what's in these documents prior to sending them to SSBCI will make the process a little bit more smooth. Also for the disbursement date, we are looking for the date per the capital program policy guidelines. The date should be the date which the funds were received by the borrower or investee. So make sure that you're using that date when you're filling out your form. All right, on to the next slide, please. Sticking to the disbursement date topic, the disbursement date that's reported in the disbursement request form should also match the prior year's annual report disbursement date. That's also something we're going to be looking for. So for SSBCI supported transactions, you should confirm that it's for an eligible business purpose as well as for an eligible borrower. Again, this goes to reviewing the documentation. Ensure that the primary and secondary purpose can be verified through the supporting documentation. And for VC transactions, the supporting documentation should include a pro forma cap table. All right, and for instances where there are multiple sources of private capital, we should be able to look at the supporting documentation and differentiate between the lenders and or investors that are associated with that SSBCI supported transaction. And also for VC transactions, the documents that you provide should show that the transaction is the pari passu requirement has been met. One way that it can be met is that the private investors sign the same agreements as the SSBCI program. All right, we are going to the next slide. All right, for FTEs, like Grace had mentioned during her demo, if you're reporting multiple loans or investments to one business, be sure not to double count the FTEs that you have reported. All right, for SETI, for transactions that qualify as supporting SETI-owned businesses based on category 4, which is the business address, please ensure that there is some documentation to support this. As you know, for categories 1, 2, and 3, those are certified, those are self-certified by the borrower or investee, but for category 4, that is on the jurisdiction to provide confirmation and documentation. So on the actual SETI cert, there's a link to the CDFI fund investment area map. So if you take a screenshot of the current business address, that would be sufficient documentation to show that they are qualified based on category 4. And concurrent private financing, just be sure that that's not included in the total loan or investment amount on the disbursement request form. Okay, next slide. So these are some best practices specifically for loan transactions. So for loan transactions, we have the minimum national consumer protections. So for the total upfront fees, as you know, this is a change that was made last year. We should be able to look at the documentation and know that the upfront fees or charges paid by the small business don't exceed 3% for loans greater than $25,000 or $750 for loans under $25,000. And for the prepayment fees, we're going to be looking at the original principal amount to determine whether it's in compliance or not. So as you know, if it's under 100,000, there can be a prepayment penalty, but if it's over, it cannot include that. Okay, repeat business and purpose transactions. So one loan cannot be enrolled in more than one approved program at the same time. A lender may not divide one loan into multiple agreements or notes, and each enrolled in an approved program for the same loan purpose. And for single transactions with multiple drawdowns, like line of credit, SSBCI, where SSBCI funds have been dispersed to the lender, you should report the full amount of both the lender and SSBCI allocated funds under the loan transaction amount and the full amount of SSBCI's portion of the loan or credit or note under SSBCI allocated funds expended. Okay, next slide. These are some specifics for VC transactions, specifically in regards to the one-to-one requirement. So for fund investment programs, the one-to-one requirement is met at the fund level. So you should know that the private investment in that specific fund must be equal to or greater than the SSBCI investment in that fund. And the private investment should constitute private financing as it's defined in the capital program policy guidelines. For direct investment programs, the one-to-one is met at the transaction level. So that means that the private capital of the transaction must be pari passu with or junior to the SSBCI investment to comply with the capital at risk requirements for equity investors. Also to keep in mind for direct investment programs, if the equity investor is a fund or similar entity, the fund or equity entity manager must have exposure to risk in its portfolio in a manner that is consistent with industry standards. And lastly, for the 171 fees to cover portfolio companies, SSBCI funds may be used to support a venture capital fund, and it must be certified annually that these services were provided. So there should be an agreement in place between the fund and the portfolio company, and that agreement should include the identification of the services to be provided to the portfolio companies and disclosure of these services offered by the portfolio company's fund manager. All right, next slide, Grace. So this slide, as well as the next two slides, are a list of the documents that we're going to be looking for when we request your sample transactions. So once you receive, once you submit your disbursement request form, we're going to send you a list of sample transactions that we've selected for sampling, as well as these same lists for what documentation that we're looking for. These lists are not comprehensive. We may also request additional documentation that we need, but this is the baseline that we're going to be looking for. So just be sure that you review these documents here on this slide here to know what we're going to be looking for when we sample our transactions. And Grace, on the next slide, please. And these are what we're going to be looking for as it relates to EPC OC transactions. Okay, and next slide. And for VC funds, these are the documentation that we're going to be looking for. And also keep in mind, like I mentioned, for the 171, there's also a cert annually that we're also going to be looking for. Okay, next slide. All right, and here is our resources and references that we've used throughout this presentation. So I'm going to pass it back to Mayma. Thank you.
Thank you, Raisa. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Jay, and thank you, Samari. And thank you everybody for allowing us to take more of your time than we're allotted for. We just want to make sure that we cover all of these slides. I just want to add a quick reminder. I know we have some good questions, so feel free to come off mute if you have any questions. We can stay on for the next 7 minutes if you have time. 8 minutes, but we just want to, it is 7 minutes, but we just want to flag that when you are ready to complete your disbursement request or are complete your disbursement request, we are available to jump on a call. Like some Raisa mentioned, our goal is to make sure that you have clean submission to reduce the back and forth and to make sure that you receive your disbursement request in a timely manner. So the better documentation that you have, it's better for us. So let us know if you have any questions. Please come off mute if you do. And if you're shy today, because we're taking more of your time than we're allotted for, we can jump on the call. Just reach out to your outreach manager or through the mailbox information that Jay enter in the chat. I'll stop talking and hopefully folks have some questions. Oh, I just want to drop. Hey, George, how are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
I know every situation is going to be different, but based off of what you're seeing thus far, on average, is there a general time frame that we should plan for, assuming things are in order, for how long it takes to get that next disbursement?
Yeah, generally we try to complete the disbursement within 90 days. Compliance drives most of the process, but there's other processes such as the payment procedure that's not driven by us. So generally we've seen some jurisdictions based on the documentation, we're able to complete disbursement requests within 30 to 45 days, but it really is heavily driven on the jurisdiction. I think Grace illustrated, we incorporated some data validation, because one thing we've seen in our review thus far is a lot of data issues, which require a lot of back and forth. So my suggestion in just jumping on the call before you submit is probably the best option to ensure that we can complete your disbursement request within that 90-day time frame.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Appreciate the question. Sorry, we will share the deck with everybody after this call. We do encourage you to also share the deck with your partners that may not be available on this call, your provider. And again, we are happy to jump on a call. We do encourage discussions within jurisdictions. So if you know a jurisdiction that may have gone through the disbursement request, they might help you with some best practices that we may not have communicated on this deck. So feel free to reach out to your outreach manager. Of course, it's up to that jurisdiction to decide if they want to communicate any best practices. But we do encourage discussion amongst yourself in those working groups and via your outreach managers. And again, we really appreciate everybody staying extra. Thank you so much. The compliance team is still working on getting a good feel of our time and the questions that might come in for these various processes that we support. So we appreciate your patience. And if we have no more questions, I think the team and I, we're happy to drop. Again, we encourage any questions via the mailbox or through your outreach managers. And we really appreciate your time today.